Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. All right. So, I guess I first want to give everybody the ground rules of what we're doing today, just so everybody understands what's happening. All right. So, needless to say, there is to be no way we could go through all these 27 bills in one day. What we are going to be discussing here is that for some of you may or may not know, but last session, this committee had no floor debates, well, except one brief discussion about crypto. I think we had a little discussion on the floor, but otherwise, this committee is a 10-10 committee, and I have been working with the leader and saying that what we want to do is that we want to find legislation that we can more than 10-10 can agree on, and that way we can go forward with. And so what we're going to be discussing today is which bills have that potential that we can find some consensus, that we can find something that we can send to the floor.
John, can I just make a comment on that?
Sure.
I just want to make a slight change to the 10-10 rule,
Okay.
which is that for an issue that we feel really strongly about and that we feel that we want to be on the floor, we are going to go forward. We're not going to obviously do it if there's one person or two people, but for something like PFAS, we are going to go to the floor.
PFAS, we've already agreed that we want
Okay,
to
I'm just
do
saying,
something.
I'm just saying there may or may not be another issue where
Right.
we want to do that.
Well, I
so-
think we have a potential for a PFAS solution.
Okay,
Okay. And we will take that up first, because I know that the DES they have another meeting, so.
right.
Okay.
I just
so
don't want to ambush you if that turns out to be the case.
I was going to qualify my statement going forward here, that at this moment, we have a couple of bills, that you would think might be a 10-10, but that, I have hopefully proven myself that I am determined to find a solution that we can go forward, and that is the PFAS issue. Okay, so other than that, I could really care less about what happens with those special elections. All I care about is what happens in this committee, and also the reputation of this committee, that when we send bills to the floor, we are not going to wait to decide who shows up that day. That is just not a good way to run government. You might think that's a good thing. I don't. So, at any rate, having said that, I just want to emphasize that people would say, whether you want to come and testify or whether you're going to, how much discussion we're going to have on any of these individual bills. It's really going to be scheduling going forward for the next month, scheduling when we will discuss more down and deep on any particular bill. So we'll start out with the PFAS issue. We have two PFAS bills. We have 242 and 465. And Mike, there you are. All right. And I have been talking with Mike, and what's important is DES in both of these bills. DES is the regulatory agency, the entity that would have to enforce these statutes. And one of the things that I think is important, and hopefully even the Democrats think is important, is passing something that is enforceable, and that we have a state entity that is willing to enforce it. And so that's why I'm interested in hear what Mike has to say. So yes, Representative Spear.
Thank you. One comment I would make about that, I'm not so sure that whether or not it's enforceable is the most important part of it. I think part of it, the most important part, is to get it to stop. And if we can join and have something on the books that say New Hampshire is against the flooding of PFAS into the state, eventually, if enough states get to it, and right now there's 24 states looking at it, if we can join, that has power. So I'm not so sure that just having something that's enforceable is the most important criteria. I think it's the power behind a lot of states telling the manufacturers enough is enough.
Okay, so well, I disagree. And I find over my 30 plus years of doing this, the most important of anything we pass is enforceability. Because putting something on the books that just simply says you can't do it and have it unenforceable is just feel good legislation. And I feel good is when I pass things that are enforceable. So that actually, we actually can do something about it. You're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Wimsat. I serve as Director of the Waste Management Division for New Hampshire DES. And with me, I have Michael Nork, who serves in our Solid Waste Management Bureau in our Planning and Materials Management and Education and Planning section. And then I also want to let you know that here, I know you've got a tight schedule today, so I don't know how deep you'll go today, but if there are questions from committee members regarding potential health effects and concerns about, why we're concerned about PFAS, I have Dr. Jonathan Patali from our Environmental Health Program, toxicologist, who's very well qualified to answer those questions. So by way of introduction, I just want to say that, the agency first discovered PFAS contamination in the Haven well at the Peace Trade Port more than 9 years ago now. At that time, we thought we had a problem related to just firefighting foams, and we started paying attention to that. We really didn't know about these contaminants prior to that, didn't know much about them. But then 2 years later, we discovered the impacts of widespread air emissions that had caused widespread groundwater and drinking water contamination in southern New Hampshire. And since that time, we have been working feverishly. That's more than 7 years ago, trying to address and understand this problem. We now know, based on the work that we've done, that we have PFAS is really throughout commerce, and as a result, it's in our food, it's in the products we buy, and it's in our bodies. And so one of the things we said early on became very evident to us, and I think I'm on record in early, probably 2016 or 17, at legislative hearings, saying that we're working hard to deal with this, and on the tail end, we're dealing with water and wastewater, drinking water, trying to make sure people aren't drinking contaminated water. But at the end of the day, we're not going to solve this problem unless we get it out of commerce in a way that, obviously, you're not necessarily going to get it out of all commerce, but there are certain areas of commerce where it's debatable whether it's really a necessary ingredient in the manufacturing process. And we're going to be fighting a losing battle if we don't reduce the amount of PFAS in the products that we purchase and use. So having said that, I want to just say that, we obviously, you all know from speaking with department representatives in the past that we're never in a position to say exactly where we're going to be on a bill till we know what the bill says, until we've had a chance to vet it through our department leadership and through the governor's office. But what I can tell you today is that, as Representative Spear indicated, there are a number of states that have already passed PFAS-related legislation related to the presence of PFAS in various products. There are many more states that are looking closely at that. And an organization that the state has long belonged to since its inception, the Northeast Waste Management Officials Association, which is an association of basically the waste waste directors from the Northeast states, the 8 Northeast states, has been working on PFAS model legislation. And that went out for comment last spring. It was very broad and sweeping, and I think the comments that the group got have shown that probably need to narrow the focus of that legislation for it to really be workable and implementable in the early going here. So we are working on that. As a matter of fact, I'm headed to a meeting there tomorrow with my counterparts in the other states, and that's going to be one of the topics of discussion. But in essence, what we think we're going to have is probably by December, a model legislation that's been narrowed down in terms of its focus and what products it addresses by December, and being able to vote on that. So that would be basically NUMOA's, the organization's recommendation for an appropriate model legislation throughout the Northeast or even the country. And so I think that what we really would like to see as an agency, we'd like to see this issue stay in play in the coming session of the legislature, so we can talk about it, so we can be informed by what NUMOA develops and what the other states are doing. I think that, and I've spoken with the chair about this a couple of times. I think that when it comes to something that DES and the agency can get behind, something that is as a reasonable focus, that has implementability through the participation in a clearinghouse. If all these states pass laws with these kinds of bans and certification requirements, and they all have a slightly different law, and they all, as a manufacturer or business community member, you have to go out to each one of those states, figure out what they want you to do and do it. That's just not workable. We never try to get behind legislation like that. But if we can have relatively uniform legislation that can be effectively administered through a clearinghouse, and we have history with this with our mercury ban that goes way back decades. New Hampshire was a leader on that, and we really helped to drive getting mercury out of products, which was a very important thing to accomplish. We can do the same thing, I think, with PFAS through a clearinghouse. We have a mercury clearinghouse that really does most of the heavy lifting for us, so it's not a big burden or an expense for the state to administer that program. We think we could use that model to do the same thing for PFAS. And we believe that the Interstate Chemicals Clearinghouse, which is administered through NUMOA, and the Toxics and Packaging Clearinghouse, which is also administered through NUMOA, we already have good examples of how those can work. For a modest membership fee, states can participate and basically have a lot of that notification and record keeping burden taken off of them, while at the same time taking the burden off the business community, because then instead of going to a bunch of states, the business community, if they're marketing products in the Northeast, for example, just go to that clearinghouse, make their certifications, make their reporting, and then it becomes available to all the states. It's really shown to be a very cost-effective and efficient model, and we believe that with a bill that would allow us to do that, would give us authority to participate in a clearinghouse and administer whatever ban the legislature decides is appropriate. We think that's a great model. So we'd very much like to see a bill in play for the coming session.
Okay, so I'll take a question in a second, but I just want to clear up something. So our situation is that we have to have this, we have to take action by November 17th, which is prior to that December date. Will there be something that we can use, that we can pass, we can get on? Obviously, once that 17th, then January, the first week of January, it would be voted on by the House floor, and then it would go to the Senate, so that anywhere along that process, it can be amended to address whatever changes that it comes out in the model legislation. But can we have something before then that we can use to at least get it out of this committee?
Sure, the agency would be more than happy to provide whatever technical assistance in drafting that is desired to try to get you something that you could be comfortable with by that time.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all right. Now, Representative Spear.
Excuse me, thank you. It may be a modification, a little bit of what you just asked. We have two bills in front of us right now that specify the use of a clearinghouse for two specific areas of products, food packaging and carpeting, textiles. Is your recommendation that we wait on that until we can see how this clearinghouse is going to work and no, I guess what I mean is what the model legislation looks like?
Sure. Well, I will tell you, I will know more in a couple of days, because I'm meeting with my counterparts who've been working on this at the end of this week. And I think that even though we may not, the board may not have voted on it yet, which really for this committee probably doesn't hold that much, doesn't really matter that much. But I think certainly if you're looking at doing something in October and November, we would have probably some good language that we could help,
But is it still, I looked at your model legislation just a couple of weeks ago, at least what was online, and you and I spoke at that time,
Right.
or actually a month ago, and at that time, it looked like it was banning pretty much all of PFAS, but I don't know that we really want to do that, because
No,
there
no,
are places where it's useful.
I'm not suggesting that at all. No, you're absolutely right. It is much broader, and that was the comments that the organization got were really aligned with that concern. I think what we're going to have soon is and I believe it may already exist, I just haven't seen it, is a revision to that model legislation that will be quite a bit narrower than that original piece. And that's something we could certainly share and help,
That would be
help
great.
to inform an amendment to one of these bills.
Thank you.
Okay, so how much time do you need? Given this is so important to this committee, our first available day would be October 3rd.
That's a little early.
Okay.
If it could be a little later than that, that would be great, but obviously we will
You-
will provide whatever assistance we
Well,
can
you
provide
well
when
tell
you
us.
need it.
What, I mean, working from Tuesday, get 3, 10, or 17.
Can we go with 17?
You want to go with 17? Okay. All right.
I'm sorry, did you say November 17th?
October.
Oh, October 17th.
Well, basically, I had originally planned to have everything out of this committee by the end of that week, but I did not realize that we had all the way out to November. So now that I know that we have November, I have no problems setting that 17th date. That's a proposal date for the subcommittee to work on coming up with some resolution to this. So what I'm assuming is that you two will stay together, glued together like Elmer's. I don't know if Elmer's has got PFAS in it, but work this out, and so that when we get to the 17, that you can be just as happy. And I have to be frank. What appeals to me most about this is that we're not just targeting 2 products. This is PFAS, everybody, all PFAS.
But it's not
Hopefully
all.
we'll solve this polymer, one polymer
Right.
versus 2 or more polymer issue. I don't know if you guys have resolution on that yet, but I'm not sure I want to know yet.
There's been a question about, what's an appropriate definition, and that is a little nettlesome. It's important. We will have that worked out. I can't tell you I can't recite what I think the exact definition should be for this, but that's something we can sort out, certainly.
Okay?
Okay, sounds good. And we're not trying to ban all PFAS because there are places like space stations and stuff where it's perfectly
I just
fine.
heard that Honeywell's new Freon has a 1 polymer PFAS in it. So yes,
John-
if there is something out there that clearly the marketplace has created as a result of trying to get PFAS out of it, and that this is where it is, then I hope
right,
it
take a look.
it's this and again, that's the reason why I like this the clearinghouse concept.
And we all did, and it's in both of the bills that we have in front of us, but
Right.
we'll build on it
Great.
with
All
Mike.
right. Sponsor okay? Okay. You- you can't be then. What day would you be here on the 10th? You could be here on the 3rd. Yeah, but that's a little tight for him. Okay. So, but in terms of your thoughts, please send a text to send an email to the committee. I think appreciate that. Okay. Everybody okay now? PFAS? All right. So we got through 2 bills. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, now we'll go back to the beginning of the schedule. All right, first up is House Bill 225 relative to prohibiting the use of currency that could be detrimental to privacy rights. Anybody here want to weigh in? I'm okay with interim studying this issue just simply so we can keep it alive, that we can always be aware of some crazy thing that occurs, that we can then come next year, we can urge to have legislation pass if something occurs. So, Representative Spear.
Besides recommending that we ITL this, I've spent too many hours over the summer investigating what this bill is and what the implications are. And I've talked about implications, and I don't want to talk about that again. The bill exists in a place in the RSA that protects privacy for transaction types. In other words, loans and various different types of loans. It doesn't in any way try to define what a legal currency is, which is what this bill tries to do. This bill is trying to define what legal tender is. The United States has a legal tender. It is the dollar. It is the only legal tender, and coins being a subset of dollars. The other part to that is the bill mashes together loan transactions, credit card transactions, and cryptocurrency transactions. Cryptocurrency is a barter. It is not money. It is not legal tender. Loans
Agreed.
are not currency. They are loans. Credit cards are high-risk loans. Other kinds of loans, like mortgage loans, are low-risk loans, and they all have the characteristics of some of the things that this bill wants to ban. Those characteristics are already there. You have very little privacy with a credit card loan. You have a lot of privacy with a mortgage loan, but not that much. When the Federal Reserve issues dollars, they are not private, they are anonymous. Big difference. If you drop a dollar on the floor, anybody gets it. It doesn't make any difference. When the Federal Reserve used to issue bonds to personal people like me or anybody. In 1982, they were prohibited from doing that. A bill was passed, a regulation was passed saying that if you're going to issue a bond to an individual, then you also have to keep track of the taxes on the interest. Federal Reserve said, screw that, and said, no, we will no longer deal with the public. And they don't, and they have not. The Federal Reserve also, our dollars are the national currency and the only legitimate currency of 12 countries and 6, territories. The United States doesn't willy-nilly change the characteristics. But the most important thing about this, and why it seems to be getting mixed up with somebody's idea of what's going on in China, I can't even begin to understand. But the most critical part of this,
Right, I think you got your point across. Why don't we
Okay,
hear,
fine.
why don't we hear from the sponsor and have
Okay.
have him convince us why we should keep this bill alive, but an interim study rather than killing it altogether because of where it is in the statute and what you are identifying in the statute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Rep.
You can
Mike
pull it
Belcher.
closer
out of-
to you. Pull it right up.
All
You can
right.
see me. I'm hugging mine.
Okay. For the record, Rep. Mike Belcher out of Wakefield. I don't know if you received, I had a printout that I had copies made. I don't know if that was delivered down yet. Yes, thank you. Excellent. When this was first introduced, this could easily have been seen as cutting edge or outside of the sort of mainstream. However, I would note at this point, if you were to look at that paper, at this point, many people, including presidential candidates, have outright called for the banning of a central bank digital currency because of the implications that it could have on the freedoms of Americans. So this is not a radical issue. It's now a very mainstream issue. In fact, a bill was just introduced in Congress that would have a similar effect to this one, although I don't have a lot of hope for it passing in Congress anytime soon. To address some of the points that were just made, the point of the bill is certainly not intended to define what a currency is. That is way outside the scope of what we're seeking to do with this. What we're looking to do is very simply to protect the rights of New Hampshire residents to use an official currency, whatever that official currency may be, without there being any capacity for the federal government, the Federal Reserve, or any third party through which a quasi-official currency may be issued to automatically or remotely block a transaction, which is a feature of programmable digital currencies, to be able to avoid having such currency arbitrarily inflated or expire, which is something we have seen programmed in digital currencies, central digital currencies in other places. China would be one of those places. We also see at this point the development of a potential supranational digital currency through the IMF. So that's another route that this could eventually take. So that's where this is trying to address. It's not a bill about trying to address or define currency. It's about trying to protect the rights of your individual citizen to go out and anonymously conduct their business without the government knowing everything about it. and without the government being able to block it. That's all.
Go ahead, Keith.
So I know this may seem like a fringe issue. One of the best tools to learn about how this is advancing around the world is the Atlantic Council. So, right? So I'll just read a couple of the bullet points here. 130 countries representing, these are key findings from their study of this issue. 130 countries representing 98% of global GDP are exploring a central bank digital currency. 19 of the G20 countries are now in the advanced stage of CBDC development. 11 countries have fully launched a digital currency. China's pilot, on, and it goes on. But this issue, technology advances very quickly, and it takes us a little while to catch up. And this is one of those moments where we're trying to catch up to this because it is happening around the world, and there's discussions of it happening maybe at some point here. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like is the issue.
I think one of the problems that we have is the notion that a digital currency is something different than the dollar. 80% of our currency exists as notations in an electronic ledger. 80% of all the currency,
Yeah, so
including
this
the
is something
transactions.
different.
Hold on,
Yeah.
I'm not there yet.
Okay.
The estimate that I read said that it is billions of dollars in bank fees and SWIFT fees to transfer money from the United States to France or anywhere else you want to transfer it if you're using SWIFT. If you don't use SWIFT, you got to use something else. SWIFT is not a bank and it's not a transmission effort. It is the replacement for a check. All it is, it says take money from this bank account and put it in that bank account. That is all that it does, and they charge money for that. The countries got together and said, we're paying billions upon billions of dollars for that. Why don't we use another transmission method? And blockchain came along. It has nothing to do with generating a different currency. It says that we can cut out billions of dollars in fees if all we do is just use a blockchain and use the ledger from a blockchain. That's all that they're
Okay,
trying to
okay,
do.
I got it. Anita.
Two questions, Representative. One, curious who put forth that bill, who's sponsoring that bill that went to Congress? And the second part of my question is, how do you think your bill would impact taxation of citizens, the IRS doing their job, and organized crime or terrorism in terms of looking at it on a monetary basis?
Thank you for those questions. I don't recall the name. I don't have the handout right in front of me because I left the original with the copy machine. But on that handout identifies the prime sponsor in Congress of the anti-CBDC bill. As far as addressing how my bill would, I think the broad part of the question is how would it affect the state's relationship to the federal government when it comes to the federal government's coinage powers and what they currently do? And that's a very good question that needs to be explored, because right now the way it works is, at least the way it's supposed to work, if everything is done correctly, is the federal government only gets access to private information about sales and things of that nature that individual citizens are conducting with a warrant. And such a central bank digital currency would completely do away with the necessity to have a warrant before accessing that sort of information, if it's programmed in a certain way that this bill is seeking to address. So the answer would be, if the federal government decides that it wants to introduce a central bank digital currency, whether it does it through the government itself, through the Federal Reserve, or through some other third party that it's acting as a quasi-public-private actor, it wouldn't ultimately make much difference. It would, if they wanted to obtain that information without a warrant through a CBDC, and we block the implementation of that currency within this state, then they would not be able to have access to that information, which pointedly is precisely what this bill is trying to accomplish.
Okay, so let's just so you guys all know where I'm coming from on this issue. Over the years, we would have bills that there were resolutions that would urge Congress to pass something. Okay, and as some of you might know, I always vote against resolutions because I don't think they're worth the paper they're printed on. Okay, because they don't have any effect. Congress is going to do whatever it wants to do, whether it thinks it's right or wrong. But the compelling reason why people do it is that they want to send a message. They want where we are with something in it, send where we're thinking. Okay, and the classic example was Crow Dickinson was always upset that Maine would send over tax collectors to North Conway and see if anybody was selling refrigerators into Maine. Okay, and he wanted to bar it. He wanted to ban it. Well, we weren't going to pass laws to do that, but we always kept his bill alive. And the live is it was sending a message that we are aware of this issue. We have a vehicle that if something were to occur, we, the state, could try to do something. Not in this case, probably if the federal government actually did pass it, which I guess people want the federal government to pass something, but in some cases, if something different. But so the reason why I recommend interim study, okay, and I know this is your first term, so just, right? An interim study, the advantage of an interim study, or disadvantage, is one way to look at it, is the bill is dead. Okay, the bill really is ITL, but the committee still has it. So we would get to vote on it one more time a year from now, okay? And a year from now, we can either say recommend for future legislation or not recommend for future legislation. And Anita will back me up. Last year, every single bill that was interim studied was ITL'd. We said not recommended for information. But the key element was that we kept it alive. We always allowed the discussion to occur. Anybody can come forward and say, oh, by the way, that issue, look what I just saw in the paper. Look what I see what's going on in El Salvador. Who is the one who's got cryptocurrency as their currency? Okay.
I think it was
Right, I know.
Nicaragua or
I'm just saying.
something.
Whoever people want to make those reference points, okay? So, yes, the bill as it's written is clearly flawed because it's making references that it shouldn't have. It could absolutely be in the wrong section. But at the same time, interim study is we're not closing the door that we will be willing to take more information along an issue. Now, I would just remind you, there are going to be some other bills farther down, over in that health insurance categories, okay, that I'm going to recommend the same thing,
And that's fine.
okay?
The question I have is this: as the bill is written, the only people that get punished for the feds doing whatever currency thing this thing seems to think might happen are New Hampshire residents. And as long as the bill says that we alone are going to get punished, that we are forbidden to use that currency, I can't see keeping this alive.
I understand you're making a case of why this bill is highly flawed in its way it's written. The underlying case is what was, as I always say, every bill has a grain of truth. Every bill has a grain of truth. And all I'm saying is it really worth it, because again, this is a 10-10, otherwise it's a 10-10 issue again.
I don't
And
think so.
It is
I
a
think
10-10.
you
It's a-
think there's people that actually want to punish New Hampshire residents for some
think-
crazy currency thing that they think might
absolutely
happen?
think that Republicans are very much concerned, as reading these findings, are very much concerned about what is going on out there.
No
and
doubt about that.
therefore, they would want us to pass something. Now, I know this is not what we would pass. Okay? And
All
we're
right,
gonna
I
have
said
this
everything I can
conversation.
say. Go for it.
We're going to have this conversation multiple times. No, I'm just
give
saying
up.
is, we're not voting today.
Okay.
We're not voting today. We're not, at this point, this is a subcommittee looking at subcommittee recommendation. Okay, so, and this is the business subcommittee. So I don't know who's here from the business
I
subcommittee.
am.
Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Who else is on the business subcommittee? 6. Okay, that sure looks like a 3-3 vote to me. Okay,
I'm thinking such nasty things.
how many more things do you have on here that you're worried that you're all lined up again? Oh, my God.
No, I promise though, these are the only two I care about. We've done the two that I care about. I'll be quiet about everything else.
Okay.
I promise.
Okay.
This isn't a 10-10 yet. We can
No,
still go in
this,
3-3
right at
and
this
go to
moment, the subcommittee is
and go to the
3-3.
exec
That
with
means
that.
we have no recommendation.
That's fine. I think that's a good way to go.
How do you know it's C3?
Okay. You want to take a vote?
Well,
Okay. Of the subcommittee, all those who are in favor of interim study, the motion I will make is an interim study motion. Interim study motion. All those in favor of interim study, please raise. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3. Are you? Who's on there? Yeah, where's the list? I guess I need
So I
to
have
Who has the
Hammond,
list?
Cole, Thaxton, Hunt, and
Ti-
then McClear, Herbert, Philio, Spear.
Okay, is that clear?
Nope.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, and Chris, did you have your hand up? 4.
Yep, 4.
Okay. 5.
5.
Okay? The subcommittee recommends interim study. Thank God.
Wait till 24.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Exactly. 2024, you can do, whoever's in this chair can do what they think is the right thing. Okay. HB 227, relative fair access to financial services. So this is another similar issue. And I'm just recommending, thank you very much. I'm recommending to interim study this bill. This bill is not ready for prime time, but we want to send the message that we definitely don't want to hear that, abuse by financial institutions and using, this is the one
We
that
did
you-
get an amendment.
Yeah, right. But also now, Representative Bernardi, we also did pass one of your bills last year that had the state. Another kid, but I'm saying we, the legislature, did. Right. And this is just trying to go beyond that. Yeah. So you turn the mic on. Okay. So would you be okay with us interim studying this bill and just keeping this issue alive so we can talk about it and especially pay attention to if we find out that some financial institution really was selling its soul to ESG?
I certainly would be agreeable to that. What was submitted, however, was last spring when you reviewed the bill. There were some various issues that were raised by opponents of the bill, and an amendment was crafted, and you never got a chance to look at it.
Right.
So what you should have in front of you is that amendment from OLS.
That's excellent. That's great. I really appreciate having this now.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Does the subcommittee need to?
Well, I
Yeah.
would prefer to have some discussion on this
Yeah.
before we ITL it.
No, we're not ITL. We're interim study.
But
Even before we
discussion.
do that, I'd like to
Okay.
know more about the bill.
Well, if knowing more about it means, have you heard my spiel at the beginning here? That if we're going to spend time delving deep into a bill, then I want to schedule it for another day.
Well, let's just have a preliminary discussion about it. I'd like to hear what the gentleman has to say.
Okay, sure. Go ahead. Turn your mic on, make sure.
Thank you. What the amendment did, and you should have the amendment from OLS and then another copy which gives you the amended language in red so it's easy to see. One of the, or two of the various opponents of the bill were concerned that the bill would cause them to have to change the scope of their actions. An agricultural bill or agricultural bank and a trust bank were concerned that the bill would make them have to open up their bank to every member of the public. So that was addressed in section A, 1A, saying that that's not the case. The Bankers Association were concerned that those that were feeling aggrieved by the process working with the bank would become hostile and volatile, and the bankers could not stop the process from going forward because of the way the bill was written. And Section B amends that language to basically say that if you have a client that's becoming hostile and volatile, that is reason for the bank not dealing with them, a legitimate reason. So it takes that issue off the table. And one of the last things was the penalty section was inappropriately cited. The wrong RSA was given, so that was fixed. So those fundamental issues were changed. The key premise of the bill, however, remains that there is potentially a problem here. This is a forward-looking bill, looking at what people in the banking industry are saying they are going to do. And when I say people in the banking industry, the top 6 banks in the United States say they are going to implement these kinds of tactics. The chairman of Bank of America, and I'm going to give you the one takeaway quote here. Take our 200,000 people, our $3 trillion balance sheet, our $60 billion of expenses, you start aiming that gun and you take across all these companies, it's huge. So if they're going to implement these kinds of tactics, you have the senior major banks in the United States agreeing that implementing these kinds of tactics is something they are looking to do. They haven't done it yet. If you look at their program, first they look at their bank themselves. How are we going to operate within ESG criteria? Next, they look at all their suppliers. And the third step, which we're not at yet, is they look at their clients. This bill is forward-looking to say, you're not going to look at your clients. We're going to stop it.
Got it. Thank you very much. Do we really want to
No,
keep going
no,
on?
no, this is a slight different, I'd like to ask the chair going forward
Yes.
that we not start the conversation by asking the person testifying, wouldn't you agree that we should interim study this? I would like to have the conversation first.
Okay. If you want me not to try to move things along, that's fine. I can.
I would not categorize it as moving things
Yeah,
along.
okay. Okay. The business subcommittee, is there anybody here who would like to pursue this bill a little more and have a subcommittee on it? Anybody on this business subcommittee? Okay, seeing none. So at this point, we're going to treat it as that the subcommittee was willing to interim study this bill. Would you like a bill? Okay, all those are the business subcommittee to support interim study, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? You're okay with interim study?
Sure.
Okay, 5. And who's at 5 to 1? Okay. All right. Moving on. House Bill 645. Okay, this is one of those bills that I was very much hoping that we would get passed this year. I know the committee is still working on it, and I can see the Secretary of State's office here. So on the 17th, you be available? Oh, that day. Okay. How about the 18th then? The day after, would that be better? Say it again? On the okay. So that is the 17th then, right? Okay. 17th?
Okay.
Okay. I hear Ryan, you guys threw a curveball.
No, no,
Who is it?
no. The banking department.
The bank department.
Yeah.
Did we even have anybody from the bank department here? Okay. You guys threw a curveball on this one? Okay. Okay. It's hopefully these things can be resolved, right? Okay. Okay. All right. So that'll be on the 17th then.
Is that the October 17th?
That's October 17th.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Next up is relative to enforcement of condominium liens for assessment, HB 178. I think I did get a letter, email. Is anybody here? I mean, my notes is this committee has killed this bill many times. We did pass it at one point in time with the 6 months because that was the Fannie Mae, and so my note I have it is an ITL. Is there anybody feel that want to discuss it rather than ITLing it? Or seeing none? All those in favor of ITL subcommittee on the business committee ITLing? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. All right. All right. Relative to the condominium disclosure of financial information, I have this also as ITL. Anybody? It's 239. Anybody wants to go to carpet on not ITLing this one? Okay.
Question, I have a question.
Yes.
Are these two bills, 178 and 239, are they together? I mean,
No,
is
they're not
there-
related.
They're
Not related. The
That's about it. That's it? Yeah.
the 178 is about letting tenants to put liens on their neighbors. I think was the killer part of that one. And 239 is just the trying to get financial information out of these boards, and I think there was even a bond issue in there or something, but I don't know. It was pretty much unenforceable, and it was problematic for condos. Okay, so ITL with that one. That was Representative Allamy's bill. Is that? Do you want to vote? Really? Okay, all right, all right. All those in favor of ITLing, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Next up is establishing a study committee on resident-owned manufactured housing park disputes and oversights. Okay, I have recommend inexpedient to legislate. We had passed something last session. I thought we had resolved the issues, but this pot just continues to get stirred. Yes.
I would recommend the interim study on this as well. I think we've had these people before us over a couple of times. I think the bill on the other side, I think that was almost unanimously passed, and I think we should take up a study of this. I really think we owe it to these people.
I'm not opposed to that. That's fine. Because it's really killing a bill when you interim study a bill, but it means we are concerned about an issue that we would like to keep it around to discuss it. Okay, everybody in favor of interim study? I'll make sure I got the right list. Can you read that list again?
Yes, for business banking,
Yes, the business banking.
Ammon, Cole, Claxton, Hunt, McClear, Herbert, Philip, Spear.
Okay, so we got Aaron, Cole, Paxton, McAleer, Herbert. Oh, yeah, and you're missing a Democrat. So you're replacing that Democrat? Did you approve that, Chair? You'll vote for them. Okay, so stop voting. You're not on it. Yeah. Oh, okay. So this list is wrong then.
It's on the list, right?
Which is the official.
I thought I printed the official list and sent it out on this.
Let's take a vote on
This
that.
email, but on this, didn't I? Wasn't there page 2 of this email that I just didn't print?
Keep it up and you'll be on the liquor committee.
So, it was on 115 for the 115, but it wasn't on the 10 a.m.
What's that?
The list of people who are on the,
Insurance.
Oh.
You're on insurance.
Oh, I see. The list, yeah, the list at the bottom here.
I'm not on insurance. There's no business, but there is insurance.
so that's who I had for banking. That's from the very beginning.
Yeah, this is, Yeah, no, this is
I've been on the
insurance,
bank
that's
for
insurance.
8
So
years.
where's the afternoon, oh, that one didn't have it. Didn't have it. Okay, I'm not gonna worry about it too much, because if the motion is interim study, all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, overwhelmingly supportive of it. Okay.
Yep.
All right, on to my next category. 73, right to repair of home appliances. So this bill started out to be, it was all about big appliances, and now all of a sudden, they come in with little appliances that frankly are, I don't even think you need the manual for, because you're just gonna throw it out and get another one, but I do have I have a very expensive gas stove, and I probably wouldn't throw out, but I don't know how complicated it is to repair it, but, so, okay. I was not too excited about passing it. Does anybody want to keep this bill around, interim study it, or talk about it some more, or
No, RTO.
you have something you want to say, Keith?
Yeah, just quickly. So I think this is going to be one of these perennial issues until
Yeah.
it gets resolved. So I guess interim study, if we want to follow the same philosophy of keeping an issue alive, just because we know it's going to come back again.
Okay. All right, I'm fine with that. Okay. Interim study. All those in favor of interim study, please raise your hand.
I'm not on this. Right.
Okay, all opposed? Good enough. Okay. All right, next up is prohibiting the state from contracting with Chinese government or affiliated technology manufacturers. Okay, so I was going to interim study this because people were worried about it, but I don't know. Worried that the governor did say that the state was prohibiting, so I wasn't really sure what the governor's order begins or ends, or this goes a little farther than the governor's order. Okay.
Question?
I think it's
Yes.
all right to-
Didn't I read the governor's order at one point, and it seemed to say that the state, for state-owned computers,
Correct.
they would not buy from the Chinese. And as a matter of fact, the federal government doesn't allow any of the federal agencies to buy from the Chinese. But private people, I don't know that anything says that you can't do that.
Well, I hope not, because everybody's computer is made in China. Let alone be confusing which China.
So I don't
It's
know what
it's
this
probably
bill
Taiwan, not,
does. So I'm not clear on what this bill does.
Okay, so you want to kill it or interim
Yeah.
study it?
Kill it.
Kill it.
Kill it. Jesus, we already got,
Yeah, I was going to interim study
already
it. Just
pissed them
just send the message that we care, but we don't want to clutter up our statutes with China.
well, next thing you know. we'll
So
go
all those in
to
favor of interim study, please say, raise your hand.
5, 6.
And all those opposed?
One.
We got
One opposed?
I
One
have to
opposed.
one.
okay.
I have to hold up somebody, you know.
Okay, that's good. We don't know what you're
Trying to
holding
get
up,
some
but you're
crazy piece
holding.
of legislation.
Okay.
I just soon kill it.
Okay. Yeah. House Bill 173 relative to toilet facilities provided by restaurants. I think we wanted to repeal this statute, right? Okay. So we need to draw up an amendment to repeal it. And can you, I know that you had some other, yeah, why don't you come on up, introduce yourself, and we're going to ask you to do a homework assignment. Good morning.
Good morning. Phil Sherman, Chair of the Building Code Review Board. The amendment that I found on the website already deletes one of the clauses.
Okay.
We speak in favor of that. As I testified, I think to the subcommittee, getting rid of the whole thing would be even better, but I'm not going to fall on my sword on that one. I do think that the separate fixture issue, I'll refer to it as all gender, that train has left the station. So the plumbing and the building codes already address, I'll call it the current thinking on that. The upcoming building code will permit what I'll refer to as the European style of one big room with a bunch of stalls and sinks in the middle or whatever to be used by everybody. The current codes, sometimes it's referred to as a Dunkin' Donuts amendment. Basically, if you have two unisex rooms, they must be posted for use by everybody. You can't assign them. So this conflicts with the code. I think it's a mite out of date. RSA 155 seems to be the closet of public safety stuff, and once in a while we have to clean the closet out. So
Probably not the best simile. Okay, so, but if you had your druthers, we should just repeal the whole paragraph? Because, I love repeal. I love that word.
the rest of this section gives the DHHS the right to provide relief, but they've still got to get relief from the building code. So it's really dealt with through the codes at this point. The only thing this does do is it brings in alcoholic beverage service. The building code separates between restaurants and what they call taverns or bars. So clearly there's restaurants with alcohol, without alcohol. Not clear that that really ought to lead us to a different approach to plumbing fixtures at this point. But we
So
wouldn't
you're-
have any problem with deleting the whole section.
Okay.
He's talking about.
So this would be 155:4, Roman numeral 1.
I believe it's colon 40, is it not?
40, excuse me, I said 40. 40, Roman numeral 1.
That's correct.
Just repeal that.
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to do that amendment? Anybody? Okay, you want to take care of that? You get that amendment drawn up? Okay, great. So you just go to legislative services. It'll be amendment to the bill, and it'll be just to remove. It would be, it would change the whole bill. It would be, amend the entire bill after the entitle. So he's telling you, right? I'm telling you right now what it's gonna be. So we'll talk off with, but what it'll be is, it'll say, amend, replace everything after the enacting clause. And then it's gonna say repeal RSA 155:40, Roman numeral 1. And then it'll have the effective date will stay the same.
Great.
Simple. Just love that.
Piece of cake.
One year I repealed, with one bill, I had two whole RSAs repealed.
We are
my-
saving the
that
state
was
of New
my-
Hampshire, Inc.
That was the pinnacle of my repeal statutes. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
So that's OTPA.
So that would be ought to pass as amended. All those in the subcommittee agree to that, please raise your hand. This is the business. Everything's business this morning. You're not on business. I don't know. Okay, all right, I'm sorry. All right, good, you're on. All right, you're on today, no matter what. Okay, all those in favor of repealing the ought to pass as amended, please raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7.
It's 7?
Okay. All those who oppose to ought to pass this amendment, seeing none, okay, unanimously. Okay. All right. Okay, now we're to Senate Bill 201, relative to resale of event tickets. So, as we all know, this is not a problem just to event tickets, it's hotels. And what other vacation rentals? I think you can sometimes choose the wrong booking company. 201. Yes. So
In line with your idea that if the bill is not enforceable, we probably should ITL it. This one is an ITL.
okay.
So she came around.
Right. Perfect. Okay, yes, any discussion on the motion? Yes, Representative
Is
Sullivan.
it not enforceable? Is that the concern?
It's not enforceable.
It's totally unenforceable.
Okay.
I mean, you're gonna go chase internet, companies that are based out of China or whoever they are.
I'm trying to
And
remember the discussion.
this is
gonna
the
be
one where,
I know, I remember the bill. I'm talking about the enforcement discussion. Wasn't it, was gonna be under the AG's office or something?
it was a violation of the Consumer Protection Act. And under the Consumer Protection Act, it's the Attorney General's or the Consumer Protection Division. And I believe he was here, but I don't see him today. And enforcement everybody's aware of this problem. And like I say, it happens more with hotels. I mean, bookings, my wife did it this past year, and then she started telling the story, and the person go, yeah, and never said, oh, by the way, you're not talking to the hotel, you're talking to a booking company. And then of course we were intimately found out what happened by the time when we checked in, and the instructions were lost, didn't get through. So, but the ticket, this ticket scalping, it's not, technically it's not scalping, but how it was outrageous to hear that they promised something, and they might not even have that ticket, and then they call up and buy the ticket through for Ticketmaster, and then turn around and sell it to you for a fee. And in your purchasing with them, you agree to a purchasing fee, without really realizing that's what you did.
Wasn't part of it like a disclosure to, like, you have to disclose that you're not buying it? Wasn't that the point of this bill mainly? Was like,
Right.
if you're on Ticketmaster, you say, hey, this is not being bought directly from whatever,
Right.
Palace Theater or
Right.
something like that.
Right, exactly.
I mean, that, and then there's the other part, which is you have to own it outright to be able to sell it. Like, you couldn't.
You actually had to have it in possession, right?
Right.
Now,
so
how do you
that's-
enforce that?
That's the part that's hard to, what are the other parts? Is the other part enforceable? Because then you can just make sure that it's disclosed somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, what I remember is, the director of the Palace Theater, has, indicated on the website that if you don't buy you should buy the ticket at the Palace Theater website. So they can do that, so the companies can, assure individuals that if they buy that ticket with them, where the event's going to
No, I understand. I was just saying, like, I think, and it might be hard to enforce because we're a small state, but like,
Yeah.
this would require like StubHub to have a thing saying you're not buying it from the Palace.
Right.
Theater.
How do we mandate that? Yeah. How do we mandate
But they
that?
can notify.
So, by the end, I mean, this is one of those classic cases. I wish we could help inform the general public. And in the old days, Google, I used to admit that you got to look for the line, but now the line is so thin you can barely see it. It's like it's a dotted line, and so when you look at a listing, above front is the advertisers, and then just under you'll see just a little dots, and under that is the actual entity that you were seeking. If you typed in Palace Theater. However, I have now found for myself personally that, and I'm so far I'm batting 100%, that when you type in Palace Theater, over in the right is the map, is the mapping, is Google Maps, and if you click on the Google map, it will then pull up and say, "Would you like the web page?" And that has worked for me 100%. So if I could tell anybody in the room, if you're Googling, if you want to make sure you're getting the actual people you're trying to deal with, actually go look at the Google map and click on the icon in the Google map. Now, having said that, it's amazing how many times I've done that, and I look on it and it says, do you own this site? That means the actual owners, the actual business doesn't even realize it's there. And that happened to me several years ago, and I immediately, because someone had put on my property and wrote it not what I call it Sunridge Castle, they put it up as Hunt Castle, and I immediately said, "Oh yeah, I own that," and then took it over and made sure that nobody else could then post up to it. But
But
it's unbelievable. You take a picture you take a picture and make a comment, this is a great, run a river. Google will then ask you and they say, can we identify that location? It's all on, people do this all on their phone. Sorry. You could. That's right. Burroughs, right. But yeah, that you can online. So yeah, it's ironically, then you can then identify a location. And best of all, they even give you a web listing. You can get a web listing for free. Whoever heard Google gave anything away for free? But yes, Representative Spear.
I think one of the things that I saw and heard during that discussion, and one of the worst things was there's this big company in the UK that routinely commandeers websites for these kinds of things. And I tried to book a thing over in in Nashua at the Arts Center, and that site did that and charged like 3 times the amount of what the ticket was when I was trying to go to the Nashua Arts Center site. And there's no way to legislate against something happening in the UK. And we were told that they were constantly under lawsuits and they don't care. They're just a factor of business.
Okay, all those in favor of interim study, right? Is that where we're at? Interim study or ITL? ITL. Okay, all those in favor of ITL, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. All right, ITL. All right, we're almost there, believe it or not. Okay. All right, legalizing cannabis for retail sales, interim study. The commission is meeting. They're moving right along. I'm on the commission, and it's a very lively discussion because there all the potential opposition is also on the commission. So we have the chief of police, and we have. But the ACLU is, and actually Representative Field is on it, and Representative Sullivan's on it. So commerce is well represented on this commission. So, and I'm fully confident that we will come up with legislation in the end. But we'll keep this one alive just to have it around. Okay, all those in favor of interim study? 2, 3.
This is the liquor subcommittee. Should have been.
No, but yeah. Okay. All right. It could be liquor. You want to be liquor?
Well, I don't get to, my name is not anywhere today, so.
Yeah, because you're just liquor, right? Because with the
It
one
should
liquor
be.
bill we have, 279, the department is still working on their amendment.
But cannabis was between.
Like you're right, it was. That was that was a mistake on my part.
Who's here from liquor?
Who's here from liquor? So John's here, Lil's here.
Lily,
Excuse me.
thank you.
I don't know. Don't you sign Lil on your?
Never. My name is Lily.
Okay. I don't know why I don't know why I had Lil in my head. Sorry. Lily. Okay, John and Representative Julio and Representative Burrows and Representative Sullivan. Okay. All those in favor of interim study, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4. On the legalizing cannabis for retail sales by 544. Okay. And all those opposed. Fair enough. Okay.
So how many was that?
5 to 1.
5 to 1.
5 to 1. For interim study. Okay. And last but not least, Senate Bill 180 relative to product labeling and prohibition of sale of hemp products containing THC. So,
New title.
Delta 9.
Yes. I mean, it's a serious issue.
I
Right.
think
So
this needs to be
what?
addressed at some level. but
This one got overcome, didn't it, by 611?
So what happened? What happened in the end? That the bill that passed the study committee, the commission, included this ban of Delta 9, but it has the caveat that it sunsets. So, and I'll take responsibility for that because I wanted to put the pressure on getting the commission bill passed. So one of the ideas of having that we will deal with the Delta 9, Delta 8, Delta 9 issue in
That's what I was.
that in that legislation. So that's why I sunset it. So for all intents and purposes, we can just interim study this just to keep it alive.
Well, so what happens if the bill doesn't, if we don't get something passed or signed this year? So
Right.
we gonna
So if
revisit
something
that?
didn't happen, when we meet a year from now,
When does it sunset?
the sunset is July 1 of 2024.
Okay.
So isn't this 2023? Yeah, July 1, 2024. So 6 months. Well, I mean 6 months, not 6 months from Pat. It was 6 months. The effective date was the beginning of the year. So so if a year from now, let's say if it didn't happen, if it didn't get passed, then we can then recommend for future legislation
Okay.
if we still want to ban it. But I'm not sure the committee was fully on
But
board.
I
with
think
the
we were
ban.
all concerned that there was no age requirement. If I recall, the conversation
was
was
no
concerned that
age
like
requirement
a 10-year-old could buy
and-
this stuff.
And the labeling, and I would say that in the commission where we talked about packaging, the problem with the Delta packaging is it is appealing to kids,
Right.
and that's clearly a problem.
Yeah. I mean, but if we're gonna, I guess I'd just be concerned that if we're gonna struggle to get cannabis legalized, which we've been struggling with various different models, we wouldn't want to like throw the baby out with the bathwater and not have something like this go through, which would actually make a real difference for potentially a young child buying these things that are completely unregulated. And it sounds like when there's somebody who actually gets like poisoning from THC, it's generally this synthetic THC, not the stuff you get from marijuana. So
Right.
I think we shouldn't. I don't know the best way to deal with it. I don't know if we want to work on it because when we talked about it before, I raised the question about I'm not really supportive of necessarily banning it, but like putting an age restriction on it. Right now, there is none. I almost wonder if we just tweaked it to add an age restriction versus an outright ban,
Well,
and then
right.
passed it. Then we
So
could
that's
do that.
true. We could fix it by age restriction and packaging
Yeah.
requirements.
I wonder if that might be a
Okay.
useful
The
thing.
problem with that is the packaging requirements then is going to what state entity is then going to be regulating the packaging, and so therefore the because the packaging means they have to submit it to a state entity, which in this case when we're done with the commission will be the liquor commission.
Right.
Okay, the liquor commission will have it set up a division within the marijuana board
Right.
that would be approving packaging that is not child interesting.
So we could just
Okay, so
choose
that
them
so
now.
we are now going to, if we were to try to pass that now, it's before that entity has even been created. So it's somewhat problematic to try to do that now.
Could you still do the age
Still
requirement
could
and
do
then
the age
revisit
requirement.
the packaging? I mean, at least then I doubt that there's a lot of people buying it who are underage, but I'm sure there are some, and so this would at least maybe eliminate
Right.
that
So
problem.
you have. Can you pull up the bill? So we could just. Yeah, and remember then also the bill needed amendment. It was about the .03 or something. The THC. It had
It was off by a decimal.
it had a decimal point problem.
So is this liquor? Yeah. Technically, it's liquor. Why don't they do, just say what it is? and you
Okay.
can't say it.
All right. So
Retail Grocers Association.
yeah, so it had the .03 rather than .3.
Yeah, that-
Yeah, there was a.
Yeah, but they're,
Okay.
they're everywhere.
We'll just strike that out.
Go to the Retailers Association too.
But I think it needed to have defined. I thought that needed that pointed as a definition. Because the first paragraph, developing, reviewing, updating.
Then you don't have.
It shows that the risk of has to be provided to qualified patients by alternate of the
We're gonna
ATCs.
have separate
Okay, so it's
committee meeting
it was allowing the ATCs to sell it, which is fine. That's right, because that's right. Simon was involved in. Simon, he was ensuring that He was ensuring that only he could sell it, right? Rather than the stores selling it, which would take care of the 21-year-old problem because you have to be 21 to get into an ATC.
Right.
That's why he doesn't say anything about that.
ATC. That's
Yeah,
the
the-
therapeutic cannabis program.
Yes, Representative. Pierce.
When we last left that bill, we corrected the value of hemp, but we did not correct the direction. In other words, it's the way it was last left. It's legislating against hemp over greater than 0.03. Hemp is not greater than 0.03. It's less than. It should be less than. Greater than is pot and cannabis.
Right.
So you
Okay.
got to change to less than, not greater than, because then you're stepping on marijuana. And that's not the definition of hemp.
Thought we had this conversation.
Can we just interim study it? I mean, you want to work on this, Sullivan? You want to take
I
charge
mean,
on this?
it sounds, and we did this amendment, and it sounds like if we just change it to less than, like, so what is the why are we?
So right
feeling
now, it doesn't have anything to do about the 21.
Right, so
Okay,
added an
because
age.
the 21 is because it says it can only be sold through the medical marijuana people.
Mhm.
Because we have it
Okay.
there.
Because it said, what is it? Right, Jody? We're looking at Senate Bill 180 as amended by the Senate. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now, was that going to get repealed in 6 months or?
That's a yes now.
Right, okay, no, that's fine,
that's
that's fine, because I knew that we had addressed it in 611. Okay. Okay, so right now, was it a 21? Age, there's no age requirement and no ATCs. They just took that, just lifted just that paragraph and did the less than,
Great. It's hemp,
Yeah,
right?
so,
okay.
So it's hemp. If there's too much THC in hemp, then, you can.
becomes pot.
sue.
Okay, so that's why greater than is correct then,
But it's
Representative
talking about
Spear.
hemp. It's talking about the level of THC in hemp, right? So,
Right, it's defined as less than 0.03. That's the definition of hemp.
well, so the prohibition is against anything greater than 0.3.
That's what the prohibition is.
Yeah.
You can't sell any hemp that has THC
high
that's
THC.
greater.
But that's not hemp. I'm sorry, that's not hemp. If it's
Okay.
greater than 0.03, it's not hemp.
It's synthetic, right? So they're,
Well, the key element was that somebody might call it hemp. But
If you're
because
saying that, all
Someone
right.
might call it hemp, but and in your mind, it's not hemp, it's marijuana. And this statute says that is correct. If
Okay,
That's why it's in.
if you're calling it, THC, and if it's greater than 0.3, then it ain't hemp.
right.
It's illegal. Okay. So that's in effect until the end of the. Right. So theoretically, if we interim study it, then we get here a year from now, and let's say nothing passed with the marijuana, that would have expired. So yes, we would then probably would want that legislation. We would actually move a year from now as recommend for future legislation. So I would say we should interim study that.
Second.
Okay. Yes, I just want to make my notes here. Okay. All right, all those on the Liquor Committee. All those on the Liquor Committee agree with interim study, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And Those opposed?
I'm still lost on the .03 versus .3.
Yes, the .03 is wrong. It is now, it's .3.
Okay. All right.
So you're okay with that now? Okay, unanimous. Perfect. Okay. Unbelievable, huh?
See you at 1,
Okay, so what I have for my notes, just to summarize,
1:15.
is on the 17th of October, we will be focusing in on House Bill 645, the decentralized autonomous organizations, and the PFAS and legislation. And that's actually two of them, but I think one of them will end up interim studying it once we find one that we can agree on with a new solution. Okay. Thank you all very much, and we'll do this again at 1:15. Just insurance.
Insurance.
Yes.
Uh,
And I broke it up into I broke it up into insurance and then property and casualty, but
Terry Post, Porcelli, Hunt,
Who's on
insurance?
Barbaro,
I'm not on
Vincent,
insurance,
Gibbs, and Burrows.
yeah, no, it's all pretty much health insurance. I don't think we had too many yeah, it's all health.
And you and me by default.
Insurance is not business, right? I'm on
No.
the business.
We're not doing anything.
We'll get started here. The room looks a little lighter than this morning, but I guess that's because these issues are a little more narrow. All right. So somewhat picking up where we left off, House Bill 414 relative to health insurance coverage for preventative PFAS care. Anybody want to run with this bill? Any? Yes. Okay. So you're not on this committee, but I did see the committees are well posted inside. All right. Okay. Representative Purcelli? Do you want to make the motion? No. How about Representative Calabro? Okay. Representative Calabro. Seconded by Representative Hunt, moves inexpedient to legislate. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, this is the subcommittee, which is Terry, Post, Purcelli, Hunt, Calabro, Vincent, Gibbs, and Burrows. So that means you're missing 2 people. Okay.
Oh, Jane's gonna.
Jane will. Okay. And now you're back in. Okay. Okay. The motion is inexpedient to legislate. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Motion carries. 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep. Okay. Establishing a committee to study an all-payer system of insurance for hospital services. Representative Burrows.
We want to overwhelmingly pass this. No, I'm sorry.
I knew you were toying with me. Okay. Representative Burrows, second by Representative Hunt, moves inexpedient to legislate. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. 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 Those opposed? So moving unanimously. Okay, 353, establishing an interstate compact for universal health care. We did get them. We did get you, right. See, okay. Representative Calabro, second by Representative Burrows, moves inexpedient to legislate. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimously. Okay, House Bill 373, relative to billing for ambulance services. Representative Burrows.
I was going to ask for ITL because of the commission ongoing, but I was asked by Representative Stringham if we could do interim study because he thought there might be 1 or 2 elements in the bill that would complement what the commission is doing. And I personally don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Interim study. Okay. Everybody okay with the interim study? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? So moved unanimously. All right. Next is relative to prompt payments for managed care. I'm interested how that's going, Mr. Commissioner. This is official. Do you get sworn in this morning too? No swearing in?
I would only just comment that I have great respect and admiration for New Hampshire's unique form of democracy, but that council process certainly has its harrowing moments. I
It
must
does.
say.
It's a roller coaster ride, ain't it?
It certainly is. It certainly is. So the update is that in about 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, we will have a comprehensive presentation ready for you to give you a sneak peek of what you might expect. I've kind of envisioned that this will have 3 parts to it, the presentation will. The first part will lay out the numbers as it pertains to a very narrowly tailored definition of prompt pay. And what you're going to find is, based off of the MCAS data, that if you're just looking at, again, that narrow definition of 30 days, you're going to see that New Hampshire carriers are almost 97% in compliance, which is right in line with the national average. We're actually slightly better than the national average. But at the same time, we obviously know that there are some issues that we've got to deal with. And so what it demonstrates to us is that if you're looking at the issue purely within prompt pay 30 days, you're not getting at the heart of what has been at issue with carriers and the hospitals. And so there has to be something more to the problem. And so we intend to identify some of those issues, share with you what they are, and then perhaps provide some recommendations for you all to consider, certainly our team to think about and consider. I know that all of you want to resolve these issues. We want to resolve these issues. I've made a commitment to the Executive Council to do everything that I can to help bring this to resolution, and that's what we will do. And then we will take a look at the report that the New Hampshire Hospital Association put forward. And again, we'll do a deep dive analysis of that. And I think that all three of those pieces will complement each other very, very well and will give you a clear and comprehensive picture as to what's really going on. So that's my update as it pertains to that legislation.
And when did you expect this to?
2-3 weeks. I mean, you tell us if you want to come back and, whatever works for your schedule. Like I said, I think we'll be ready to roll in about 2 weeks' time.
Okay, 17th it is.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Any questions or any comments? All right, great. Senate Bill 235. My understanding, you guys are still negotiating. Sorry. DJ? Yeah, 235, the behavioral health people, you guys are still negotiating? Is there still, that process is still negotiating?
Number of meetings with the interested parties. This is a mental health.
Yeah, the mental health one.
Behavioral health, yeah. And we've identified a number of billing codes that are relevant to this issue. And we have another meeting set up to try to get final confirmation that those billing codes are the ones that are not being successfully billed. And once we do that, we'll be in a position to basically solve the problem.
Okay. So while you're there, I know there's another one. How's the study committee on coverage for reproductive health care? You guys were doing a study committee on, that was our 198, which we had, ours was the, you want to give us an update on that while you're there?
Done or not done? So the report, it has been concluded. It's been done. We used our contractor to do it. I believe it's been distributed to the stakeholders at this point. We'll be sure to get a copy to you as well.
Well, I haven't got one. I'm a stakeholder, but I don't think I have seen it yet. So
We will get that to you ASAP. It was just concluded, I think, late last week.
okay.
It was just concluded late last
So
week.
can you give us the highlights? What was the?
Sure.
I was in Scotland.
The number is big. That's what I can tell you. The number is big.
It is big.
It's big. Yeah.
Well, some of us had predicted when that got passed that it would be big. Yes, Representative Spear.
It's not exactly a question, but it is a comment based on some research I did over the summer on this bill. We're talking about the reproductive health care one.
Okay.
No state in this country has such a bill, has such a law.
That is true.
5 countries in the world have the law, and the only, with some extent, And those countries have all got universal health care kind of thing, government-sponsored health care. I'm not sure that we should even consider it based on that kind of a thing.
No, we'll get to that, but I just wanted to hear how the department. So the only other question, did it have, because you also have the, because you have all the secret formula stuff here. So one of the numbers this committee's always been intrigued by is what percentage of quote unquote mandates have on our overall premium. And I know that does create a judgment call of what the premiums. And then we've heard, anywhere from 3 to 8 or something on there. We've heard numbers. Do we have an idea what percentage this impact it had on?
I don't know how much of the impact this specific would have. I
Right.
mean, I think as you appreciate, Chairman Hunt, rarely is it the case, now this is an exception to that, but rarely is it the case that any single mandate is going to significantly put upward pressure on premium. The
Right.
problem is, of course, the cumulative effect of all of them. And what does that introduce into the dynamic such that it could put upward pressure on premiums? My understanding from my team as it pertains to this piece of legislation is that they faced a really difficult barrier in terms of how the legislation was drafted. And so I say this all the time, but as a general rule, but in this case, we're happy to be a resource to anyone who would like us to review legislation to ensure that it is achieving the objective that you as policymakers are hoping to achieve. Sometimes it's difficult when folks get results back from us. They're not happy with the results that came back out. We can only assess the legislation based off of what's there on the paper in terms of what would become statute if it were to become law. And so there were some drafting issues. Freeman, I think, did the best they could to assess it based off of how it was drafted. And so I will be sure to get the study to you before the end of the day.
Okay. So you're telling me I have to have another mandate to do a baseline to compare this one?
We have some information that we can make
Okay,
available to you
good.
on the global question.
That'd be great.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, I'd
Yes.
update the committee on one other item as it pertains to ground ambulance, which I know is a topic that you
Okay,
just,
the ambulance.
discussed.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that'd be good.
So as Representative Burrows knows, and I believe I made you aware of this too, Representative Hunt, the New Hampshire Insurance Department is trying to take a proactive approach to resolving a developing situation. It's been developing for some time, but it's really, I think, coming to a bit of a crisis point as it pertains to ground ambulance providers, particularly the private ground ambulance providers. At the end of the day, the municipals are under the same pressure, but they have safety nets underneath them. The safety nets being other areas of their community's fire department budget, or ultimately all of us as property taxpayers to our communities. But the privates, of course, do not have that safety net. And so I have convened what I've called an ambulance summit, for lack of a better term, but I've brought together some stakeholders from the ambulance provider community, led by State Senator Susan Prentice. She's kind of identified some of the key players. They're at the table. All of the commercial carriers are at the table. We have had some very positive discussions so far. We have had the group break into, I think, 3 or 4 subgroups that are looking at different aspects of this. And I think we're going to hopefully make some progress. I'm not entirely sure that we'll need any sort of legislation to address this, which is good news, obviously. But it is possible, and I want to stress possible, though I am an optimist, that there may be an agreement around some form of limited prohibition on balance billing as it pertains to ground ambulance. That both sides, through that give and take process, may be able to reach an agreement. And so that be the case, where Representative Burrows' bill is an interim study, I assume that it is still viable to potentially become a vehicle toward an agreement before you've got to get things out I think your deadline is the beginning of November.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, we could have it till the first week of January.
Okay.
Because the first week of January, we could then come in with a different motion if there was an amendment.
Great. Well, as I said, I am an optimist, but I'm not making any promises. As most of you know, this has been a many decades long issue. But I think that given the confluence of events facing the situation here in New Hampshire with ambulances, it may be the opportune moment for some sort of a grand compromise in a package of things that will hopefully resolve the issue.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, now to the last one.
Excuse me,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah,
So are we deferring 235 and 198 to a later date?
yes. Yeah, 235, which we just discussed. Yes, we will, I guess we'll take him up on the 17th.
So we have 3 bills date specific now for the 17th,
We
correct?
have now 4. Now we have, yeah,
No, not this afternoon, the 17th.
2 from this morning. You weren't here.
Well, I mean, this subcommittee.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. HB 130, repealing the Drug Affordability Board.
I'd like to move ITL because apparently there's been progress made in the budget and other ways of dealing with it.
There
So-
was. There was. That is true. Okay. Any discussion on inexpedient to legislate on HB 130? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Moved unanimously. Okay.
I think it's the same situation for 172.
So, right, right. So we can ITL that one also. Okay, all those in favor of inexpedient to legislate, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? So moved unanimously. Okay, 303. So Representative Calabro wants to give life to this bill. How many different mandates are in, or entities are
We
in
need
this?
to change the words for that, and I'm going to have the sponsor of the bill give us a reworded version of this as we had discussed at our last committee meeting.
Okay, but
This is
can you give
Chairman
me a
Nagel.
thumbnail of how many, what were, you have 303? Somehow it seemed like you threw the kitchen sink at it.
He really did, which is why we need more time. So give
I
us
know, but
another-
I just want to know. So for the rest of the committee members, many years ago, can't even remember, we had a bill to mandate natural paths to be primary care physicians, and natural paths could be close to into the same categories as these people.
I would agree.
And the end result was that this committee said, okay, we'll, instead of having shall, we turn it into a may, which means that doesn't mandate the insurance companies to do it. It just means that there is a parameters that they could do it and what the parameters would be if they did want to do it. And I have not heard too much pushback on the natural pass may. Haven't heard any complaint about it, so.
I would speak a little bit about what I know the sponsors were willing to concede about, and what I've discussed with some members here in Commerce that had originally wanted it to be tabled, or retained. Essentially, we have a system where a primary care provider like myself has a patient in chronic pain. They generally, on average, have about 10 years of chronic pain before they make any progress in getting the treatment and getting efficacy. In the short period of time that I've been a part of HB 66 committee, which studies the the treatment for non-pharmaceutical treatment of chronic pain, it's become very clear that most of the models that we see, I'm not as fond of. I'm hoping we can find a better model, but essentially what I know Nagel and Merchant were willing to concede was they agreed that it needs to be licensed by the state, A. B, we need to make sure that it has a limit. We need to cap what is acceptable, and 12 seemed to be the magic number that insurance companies were happy with. And the third part was what I told him was that a mandate isn't going to get past anybody, and I don't want to mandate anything. It's enough of evidence for the research that we've done thus far that is showing that this is a more economical solution. And if it's 6 weeks of efficacy and less than 1.5 epidural injections, I think we should be evaluating it, which we're doing in this committee. Not this committee, but that committee. I want to at least get the ball rolling so that providers like myself have a little more options than just orthopedics, neuro, and a pain clinic.
So things like aquatic therapy and yoga? Okay.
If they're licensed, then they can be accepted.
Oh, so they have to be like, oh, I like that's good, good, okay.
I want this
missed
done
you say
safely and not with just somebody who says I'm a healthcare provider, okay? Sorry.
Right. Okay,
Licensing is important.
Great. Okay. Okay. So I urge you guys to get that amendment drawn up right away and get it out to the committee members so we can see it ahead of time. And so at least we can get it, and if there's any questions, we could schmooze it, so by the time we get to the 17th, we could have it resolved. Okay? Okay. Everybody ready to move on from that one? Okay, 383, relative to provider contract standards for PBMs. If everybody understand now what a PBM is, that it's just an offshoot of the insurance company, and the idea of licensing and regulating them, and yes, Representative Spear.
So I looked this one up, and 6 states have exactly the same words that this bill has. And on the surface, it seems like a good idea, except that in every other state that has this, there's a lot of other laws around it that say things like MAC prices have to be published, the sources for the drugs have to be available and noticed. They don't have it with this bill, the wording of this bill by itself. It needs to have the other stuff that goes around it. If we're not going to do that, then this bill kind of leaves us with a situation where the drug companies, or I don't mean the drug companies, the PBMs can say, well, then in that case, we're just going to raise the price to whatever you can get it for. So I don't think we should leave, the bill is not viable by itself to do us any good at all. So I'm kind of thinking maybe we better not do it.
So what other states were doing it?
Would you repeat that question
What
again?
other states? You said had.
Oh,
had-
Ohio, I gotta get
had
my
this
notes.
laundry list of requirements.
I have a list. Do you want me to, I'll dig it
I'm
out.
interested in any of them in New England.
I don't remember. Let me get my notes out. And I write everything down, so I've got it.
Curious as to why you're asking about New England. Are we special or?
Really special.
I know we do tend to think of ourselves as being the most highly regarded region in the country, but I wondered what was underlying your question.
Because the same carriers.
Same carriers. Thank you. Not everyone might have known that.
New York, California, Kentucky, Ohio, Hawaii, and Illinois. And then I fell asleep and I didn't go any further. But I thought that was a nice cross-section of
Okay.
states that did it.
All right, you're all right. ITL?
Yeah.
Everybody okay with ITL?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor of any expedient to legislate, raise your hand. All those opposed, okay. Okay. Guess I'll make my daughter's soccer game after all. Okay, granddaughters. All right, relative to affordability and safety of clinically administered drugs. Well, this is Representative Bill, and we had a little conversation, and at this point, the issue is great that to really get us all informed, to knowing about what going on out there. But at this point, my radical idea was maybe a little too radical and people weren't exactly ready for it. And so yeah, I think I would like to interim study this just so we keep that relationship balanced in terms of how what the hospitals are charging for these rare and unique
Mr. Chairman,
drugs.
what was your,
That they had basically had to use PBMs, use the PBM pricing rather than their in-house pricing.
the proprietary nature of that seems to be the big sticking point. Yeah, okay.
So, is everybody okay with interim study
For 513?
for 513? Yeah. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So moved unanimously. Last but not least, directing the insurance department to conduct a cost study of providing coverage for reproductive health care. And we have decided to do that one on 10/17. Well, actually, it's somewhat disrelated. Yeah, right.
Very expensive.
Right. Okay. All right. Yeah, I thought there was two different ones. I thought the issue, I forgot that it was a cost study involved in it. Right. Okay. But at this point, we put it off to the 17th to actually get the study. So but it would be a little premature for us to kill this bill until we actually seen the study. But yes, Representative Spear.
2 points. No insurance company is prohibited from doing it. For instance, if
That
you
is
want to
true.
work for, what is it, the coffee company, Starbucks, they offer it. Nobody's prohibited from doing it. Where the problem comes in my mind, is forgetting about the cost for a minute. New Hampshire has some of the best fertility or infertility insurance in the country. They're among the 15 best states in the country for infertility. If we do something like this, and one of the things that says in our laws is that we cannot provide any insurance, and this is health insurance, by the way, any insurance to a heterosexual couple that cannot be provided to a same-sex couple. It has to be the same. But they limit it to medical insurance, not social insurance. If a heterosexual couple wants to go the route that would result from this being enacted, that would mean that anybody could then go and say, well, I don't want to have sex with my partner, so I want the insurance, if they're going to make it equal, so I want the insurance company to pay for the various procedures that can be done, in vitro fertilization, all that kind of stuff. If we're going to make it equal, then everybody can say, well, I think my husband is an ugly shit and I don't want anything to do with him, so I'm going to go and do it. But I think, and you can cancel that out. But it really gets down to that. If we make this equal, where do you draw the line?
Okay, we're not debating this bill right now.
I understand.
And we absolutely hear where you're coming from. So
Is that going to be in the record?
as I remind everyone, everything is now
I
on
don't care.
YouTube forever.
That's all right. I'm so old at this point, forever is only a little ways away. It's all right. Okay.
That's a good way to end the day.
Right. On that note. Okay. All right. So what I have is that everybody gets a 4-week vacation from this committee. So we all come back on the 17th. And just so you know what that does, because that following week I will be in Europe, so that would mean okay. So we have two weeks, 7th and the 14th. You know, we definitely have 2 weeks after that into November to have the committee exec all these bills. I would want to say is that the actions that the subcommittees did today is obviously not cast in stone yet because the committee has not voted on it. So, and anyone, if there's a conversation or something and someone feels, one way or the other, it's obviously free to be rediscussed when we exec it. But that I hope that when we get to the exec session, it'll be another one of our wonderful move it in, move it out, and get her done exec session. So at this point, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bills for the 17th. And then, excuse me, we do have some liquor bill, one little liquor bill, and we are waiting for the department to work that out in terms of, and I know that there has been some discussion around in terms of the over-serving, that with it, in terms of like the 7, when you go the days, 10 day, 30 days, first suspension, second, the underlying theme, of course, is that the Liquor Commission definitely pursues every case. And so that there was some conversation we want give them an up to, so that it's the severity of the case that could kick in the 30 days. That if it's considered that the commission is obviously, and I would have to say that if someone anyone can appeal the commission's decision, they actually can take it to court if you don't like the decision, but that if the commission feels the severity of the case. I mean, the reality is, we don't have a lot of this, thank God, in New Hampshire, that, people dying. And so every time it does happen, it does feel severe, and it feels, but that there are extenuating circumstances, and the commission definitely does its homework and research it and pursues it like a full legal case in terms of analyzing it. And Representative Terry.
Yes, in complete agreement, Mr. Chairman, with what you've just said. But in addition, I think to be a bit more specific, conversation was around recommending that there be a mandatory minimum on the second offense of at least 7 days, so that the discretion would fall between 7 days and 30 days. Thank you.
And Sullivan, I know you care about this issue. Do you have anything you want to weigh in on?
No, I'll be interested to see what they have. I mean, I think we just need to be aware that there could be unintended consequences if we go really extreme on it. And so I'll be curious to see what the language looks like. I wouldn't be super comfortable if this potential bill would be putting restaurants out of business for an offense or whatever. So,
right.
So I'll be curious to see what it is. We can have that discussion when it comes.
I think everyone generally agrees if it was the first offense, it's hard to imagine to go for a full 30-day suspension, but the underlying situation there was such blatant abuse that the establishment should have known
Sure, and I
better.
think there was other things that we talked about too, like time limits. Like if you have a first offense this year, and then in 2031 we have a second offense.
Right, how the
like,
timing between
yeah, I mean,
the
there's a
offenses.
lot of things that we talked about that I think we need to think about, just because we don't want to be like, yeah, a decade passes and they have another offense. Is that gonna put, or whatever, something that's
Right.
been open for 40 years, 50 years? You don't want to be like, these things are going to happen no matter what. We can't
Right.
get rid of it.
And I do know that I am sponsored a bill for the commission that is taking some of the rulemaking for some of the license, the ones like the tobacco, and taking it out of statutory and put it into rulemaking, so that the department could be a little more flexible in terms of how they decide how do we do that. So whether you think that's a good or bad idea, we'll be talking about that this next session. But I think everything comes down to see what they've come up. And I know that they're working very hard on getting this concluded. So that would make another one for the 17th. That is 279. That's 6 bills. Okay. Otherwise, enjoy your fall vacation. We'll see you all in a couple of weeks.